Are you crazy? Let me go! She screamed helplessly, trying to free her hair from his grip. Say whatever you want, I don't care. But trust me, you will be the mother of my children. Now, whether the kids are dark or fair, I don't care. I know why you stepped into my room in the dead of night. Darkness like this. You, who never came to my room until today, sitting on my couch waiting for me? You must have some specific agenda. But I will never let you succeed in your plans. At first, I was going to refuse this relationship myself because of your tongue, which runs sharp and long like a pair of scissors. But not anymore. Now, it is my own stubbornness and primary desire to trim that scissor-like tongue of yours with my own hands. Anyway, why use hands? I have a separate and unique method to bridle that yard-long tongue of yours, which I will tell you tomorrow after the wedding. What is your problem with this wedding? Give me the proper reason for refusing this proposal. This was the scene of a bedroom where everything was glowing in light pink. An expensive, soft, light pink carpet was spread over the white marble floor, and matching curtains draped the windows, complementing the room's paneling and ceiling. This room looked like it belonged to a princess from a fairy tale, and the lifestyle of the girl living in it was no less than that of a fairy tale princess. She was the pampered and only sister of her brother, Ethan William. She had been raised with great indulgence and style. But they say that in the William estate, even more than her brother Ethan William's whims were catered to. And even now, the family left no stone unturned in fulfilling his undue demands. At the William estate, during dinner, their family friend Uncle Henry had asked her father, Daniel William, for his precious daughter's hand for his own beloved son. Her father had immediately expressed his heartfelt consent and agreed to the proposal right there. And why would he object? In their family, relationships had always been formed within their circle like this. Even now, without hesitation, he had openly expressed his heartfelt agreement to this match. Anyway, while in everyone's eyes this match was reasonable, appropriate, and perfectly fitting for their family status, for Scarlett William, who had to spend the rest of her life with him, this match was a heavy burden. Even now, upon her brother Ethan asking, she had clearly refused him in plain words. Upon her refusal, a web of frown lines formed on his forehead, and raising an eyebrow, he tried to find out the real reason for her refusal with stern expressions. Ethan, no matter what happens, I will absolutely never marry that beast. First, his dark personality, and on top of that arrogant man's pride. Even the shoe on my foot wouldn't like him, let alone staying in a relationship with him for a lifetime. Shut up, you idiot. If you are refusing merely for this reason, then in my eyes, this is not a valid reason for me to take your side. Tomorrow evening, you will marry him. Be ready. He snapped at her, delivering his order and leaving. Why had she forgotten that the person she was bad-mouthing in front of him was his reflection? Arrogance, ego, anger, stubbornness, and audacity. They were unmatched. Once his mind was set on something, he would do it. Even now, how could he hear his friend being bad-mouthed by the person in front of him, even if that person was his beloved relative? But brother. She wanted to say something, but the seriousness in his blazing eyes stopped her from saying anything further. No buts, and no more drama or fuss. Got it? Casting one last fiery look at her, he walked out of the room. Meanwhile, fuming with anger, she started pacing here and there in the room, muttering something under her breath. This was the only hope she had, that her brother would listen to her in this matter. But now that he had clearly refused her, the last glimmer of hope she had seen in the darkness died within her. Now she had only one solution left for this problem: to gather the courage to go to the person she was going to be tied to for the rest of her life. Walking like that, with determination, she quietly slipped out of the room. It was roughly 2:30 or 3 o'clock in the morning when a black car stopped past the gate. Instead of calling the security guard, the driver in the front seat picked up a remote control from the dashboard. He pressed a specific button on the remote, which was digitally connected to the house's massive gate, opening it. He drove the car through the lawn's driveway and stopped it in front of the house's main entrance. Then, with great efficiency, he opened the back door of the car, from which a 28-year-old man dressed in a very fine branded black suit stepped out. His tanned complexion, deep brown eyes, and sharp high nose made his facial features even more attractive, On top of that, his pomp, awe-inspiring presence, and arrogant tone added 4 moons to his attractive personality. In every respect, he was worthy of being loved and praised. It would be better to say he was the embodiment of love. To harbor desire in one's heart for him, to wish to attain him, was synonymous with praising his beauty. Ordering the driver to park the car in the porch and leave, he came toward the main entrance. Using his thumb on a fingerprint scanner on the right side, he opened the door and entered this vast, mansion-like house. The lounge of the mansion was drowned in darkness. Only the lights where he was walking were on. Passing through the lounge, he climbed the stairs and stopped at the 4th door at the end of the 2nd floor. He had just grabbed the handle when the door creaked open. Perhaps someone hadn't closed it properly while cleaning. He shook his head and walked toward the dressing room, where he placed his watch, mobile, and wallet. He took off his shawl and vest, placing them on the dressing table. He was just about to turn after putting these few things down when he looked up into the mirror in front of him. His gaze traveled through the dressing table mirror and stopped on his brand-new fiancée of one day, lying on the couch. She had perhaps fallen asleep while waiting for him, burning and fretting. His relaxed and tired features suddenly tensed, thinking about what she was doing in his room at this time. Walking with a regal gait, he came and stopped near her. Going close, he gazed at her soft, smooth, glowing milk-white complexion and her long, dense black lashes, which were perhaps trembling slightly due to her being asleep. Dressed in a loose black shirt and trousers, her oblivious, captivating form, she had appeared before him like this for the first time. And in the very first instance, he was wounded by the strike of her oblivious beauty. Staring at her careless beauty, lost in his own trance, he leaned over her. Now, he began to imprint every feature of her face into his heart through his eyes. He admitted from his heart that this girl, along with being sharp-tongued and clever, actually possessed the skill to defeat him completely. His bold gaze traveled from her wax-like red and white cheeks and settled on her lips, which were devoid of any artificial color. Her lips, pressed together, were doing a fine job of tempting him. His heart yearned intensely to touch the softness of those lips with his own to feel them. He was lost in the mesmerizing fragrance rising from her body. But then, suddenly, he felt irritation at that same white complexion. The reason was the sharpness and bitterness of this girl's tongue. On top of that, her undue pride in her beauty stopped him from advancing toward her. All of this stopped him from getting lost in a new and unknown journey with her. But perhaps neither of them knew that they were both very soon going to become residents of a new journey, the journey of love, a place where there is no road back. Only one path is visible, on which one just has to keep walking, traversing all the stages of love. This journey of love is a journey of gain and loss, and only those reach the pinnacle of this journey who accept the trials of love with their heart and soul. Shaking his head to dismiss these useless thoughts, he extended his hand toward her. "Hey, get up from here." He shook her by grabbing her cheeks mercilessly while waking her. At this, the poor girl woke up startled, knowing she was present in her enemy's room at that moment. But still, she woke up groggily, rubbing her beautiful hazel-grey eyes. When she removed her hands from her eyes, she looked at the person in front of her with bloodthirsty eyes. "Which rabid dog bit you that you are waking me up like a madman?" Instead of being embarrassed by her presence in his room at this time, she looked at him with angry eyes, rubbing her cheeks and hissing. She did this perhaps to show him that living with him was a far-off thing. She couldn't even tolerate a slight touch of his on her existence. Meanwhile, at her action, he was rolling on coals. "A rabid dog didn't bite me, but you, since you are sleeping here in my room, having brought your esteemed presence like a junkie who sold their horse and donkey to sleep. Wait a second, pal. Were you in such a hurry to come to my room that you couldn't even wait for the wedding tomorrow? By the way, just between us, I won't tell anyone. Tell me one thing. Were you in such a rush to come to my room that without waiting for our wedding, you are sitting here, laying your eyes on my path, waiting for me?" He placed his hands on both sides of the couch, trapping her, and brought her beautiful, angry face into focus. Leaning slightly toward her, he spoke in a tone that was pleasantly mysterious. "My eyes wouldn't even lay a shoe in your path. Being desired by you? You beast!" She spoke with a sarcastic smile on her lips. The rest of her words hadn't ignited as much fire in him as those last two words did. He was left smoldering. He entangled his masculine fingers in her light golden hair, mercilessly gripping her hair, and brought her face so close to his that his warm breath began to scorch the soft features of her face. She looked at the distorting angles of his face with red eyes. "Ah, are you crazy? Let me go!" she screamed helplessly, trying to free her hair from his grip. "Say whatever you want, I don't care. But trust me, you will be the mother of my children. Anyway, why use hands? I have a separate and unique method to bridle that yard-long tongue of yours, which I will tell you tomorrow after the wedding." Saying this, he smiled meaningfully and then continued. "Now you just get lost from here." He jerked her hair mercilessly, stepped back, and stood up. Gasping, she got up from the couch, cast a bloodthirsty look at him, passed by his side, and walked away silently. "Lock the door on your way out." Hearing his order, instead of closing the door, she opened it fully and walked out of his room. Upon her leaving like a wet cat, he laughed heartily. "Who is it?" Hearing the knock on the door, Mr. William asked in a busy manner from the room. "Dad, may I come in?" She knocked lightly on the door and, upon his asking, peeked her face into the room to ask permission. "Come in, my beautiful girl." Hearing his beloved daughter's charming voice, he gave permission happily. "Sorry, Dad, I disturbed you. You must be getting late for the office." She spoke apologetically, seeing him putting on his coat in a hurry. "No excuses, my little girl. I am always available for my children." Closing his cufflinks with one hand, he turned fully toward her and spoke cheerfully. "Dad, that—" She began to weigh her words. She couldn't understand in what words to state her purpose. But then, gathering the courage to say something in front of him, she spoke in a stammering tone. "Dad, I don't want to do this wedding." As soon as she said this, he narrowed his eyes and raised his right eyebrow, looking at her. She faltered while speaking. She couldn't make her point because she was well aware of her father's fiery temper. Who knew when something would go against his mood and he would get angry? "Dad, actually, my studies aren't complete yet. So what I mean is, why get into the hassle of a wedding so soon? I mean, for a year or two, can't you wait for this wedding?" She stepped forward, holding her father's hand firmly, asking with great affection and entitlement. But it was another matter that she actually wanted to tell him that she was absolutely not in favor of marrying that arrogant beast. But in her haste, her chaotic mind advised her to use her studies as an excuse to refuse the relationship for the time being. She listened to her mischievous brain and acted on it. She looked up with loving eyes, waiting for his answer, when after a pause, he took a deep breath and spoke. "I have given my word to Henry. I cannot refuse this relationship at the very last moment when wedding preparations are going on in the house, my beautiful child. And besides, I am damn sure this wedding won't make any special difference to your studies. You can continue your studies after marriage too. Xavier, Henry's son, to whom your engagement is fixed. What problem could he possibly have with your studies?" He patted her head lovingly and explained calmly. In his view, this wasn't such a big issue that he would have to cancel the wedding. "But Dad," she tried to make one last small effort, wanting to protest strongly again. "No buts. Now I am getting late. I'll talk to you later. Bye." He was getting late for the office, so acting as if blowing away her refusal in the wind, he patted her cheek lovingly and, without paying attention to anything else she said, left the room. After he left, she stomped her feet in anger at her unfinished conversation and walked out. "So, did you get the answer?" When she entered her room, she saw him sitting on her sofa. He was sitting very calmly with one leg crossed over the other, shaking his leg carelessly and asking her sarcastically. Seeing him occupying her sofa with such entitlement, and on top of that, his sarcastic manner, she came near the sofa, fuming with anger. "First, tell me, how dare you sit in my room and on my sofa?" She hissed in anger, looking at his calm demeanor. "Don't even talk to me about daring. Try me, my dearest future wife. I have a lot of daring." He looked at her face, which was red with anger, with a sarcastic smile, speaking in a drawn-out, meaningful tone. "Future wifey, you didn't tell me what happened. You went to Dad to refuse this relationship, right? So what answer did you get?" He was fully in the mood to burn her. He asked with a repulsive smile on his face, rubbing his chin. He looked at her beautiful face, where redness was blooming due to anger. Enjoying this, he continued his speech. 100% regret. Here too, Miss Scarlett William had to face defeat. OMG. He spoke dramatically, enjoying her state. This is your misunderstanding, Mr. Xavier Knight. You are not yet worthy of Scarlett William decorating you as a dream in her eyes, she said sarcastically, striking a blow at his taunt. If not a dream in your eyes, well, at least I have the misunderstanding that I am about to become your husband this evening. He also looked at her form closely and spoke with a sarcastic smile. She was so angry that she couldn't form any words to answer this headstrong man to control his fire-spewing tongue. Suddenly she felt like crying at her helplessness, and she cast a helpless look at the cruel person standing in front of her. Miss Scarlett William, you can only squirm and try to refuse this relationship. Apart from that, you can do nothing, nor can you take any practical step to stop this relationship. Admit it, Miss Scarlett, that you are completely helpless before Xavier Knight. The one who has the most right over you and your existence is Xavier Knight. For you to keep a desire or wish for anyone else in your heart is merely your sheer stupidity. And above all, for you to think of anyone else while I exist, Xavier Knight will never let that happen. Seeing her helpless state, he held her by the arms, brought his face closer to hers, and spoke sarcastically, striking at the helplessness, anger, and irritation shadowing her face. My wedding may happen with you, you beast, but I will make you realize every moment that my will was absolutely not included in this wedding. I will make living impossible for you. In return, she looked into his brown eyes and smiled with a repulsive smile to provoke him. I like it. I really liked this style of yours. But my future wife, you are still in error. You are very optimistic if you think I will tolerate your attitude after the wedding. Believe me, in exchange for your insolence, when this beast introduces you to his full intensity, you won't be able to tolerate even a glimpse of it. He also looked at her features turning red and warned her meaningfully with a villainous tone. At such bold conversation, all the blood in Scarlett's body squeezed out and gathered on her face, turning her already red face into a deep crimson like twilight. Leave me, Xavier. Let me go. It hurts. What could she say to this rude, bold human? But trying to free herself from his merciless grip, she could only say this much. At this, he let her go with a jerk, cast a sharp look at her, and left her room. Behind him, she rubbed her soft white arms, seeing the red marks formed by his hard grip. Looking at them, she relieved herself by cursing him with every curse word she knew. Tanya, make my daughter the most beautiful girl in the world today, Mrs. Williams said, placing her hand on her shoulder, looking proudly at the city's biggest beautician standing with her, and then at her beloved daughter. Meanwhile, Scarlett had sewn her lips shut. She dared not say any useless word after that. She knew that escape was impossible now. As per, what can a dying person not do, she had accepted defeat and agreed to this wedding. Yes, she had truly determined in her heart that she would definitely take revenge for her helplessness and this forced wedding from that cruel person. Yes, ma'am, no issue. She is already so beautiful, mashallah. What need does she have for these artificial layers? But still, we will prepare her according to your wish so that your heart will be impressed by the brilliance of our skill, just like every time. The girl in front knew very well how to convince Mrs. William with her words and skill, so she just nodded at her instruction. Okay, well, leave it, we can talk later. Right now, time is very short. Guests have arrived at the house. The wedding ceremony will start shortly. You have at least 2 hours. In this time, you have to make my daughter a bride as beautiful as the moon, so that whoever sees her just keeps looking. It should be known that in the William family, even a simple wedding ceremony is no less than a grand festival, she said in a very proud manner, and then walked out of the room with a regal gait. The ceremony had formally begun. Colourful electric lights had added sparkle to the gathering everywhere. The hall was packed with guests. Although only very special and close acquaintances were invited to this ceremony, seeing these few esteemed relatives, it seemed as if the festivities of the entire city had settled here in the William estate. She came down the stairs to the stage under the guidance of her beloved friends. In the middle, An artificial screen was created using a fine white net cloth. It was decorated with rosebuds and expensive electric lights to make it even more beautiful. Upon her arrival, at Ethan's signal, the priest formally began the wedding. Xavier Knight, son of Henry Knight, your wedding is agreed with Scarlett William, daughter of Daniel William. Do you accept this wedding? After reciting the formal sentences of the wedding, the priest asked for his consent. At this, he instinctively cast a full glance at the cruel veiled figure behind the net in front of him, who was hiding her beautiful facial features from him behind a veil. Involuntarily, his lips touched a captivating smile, thinking that he was about to have total dominance over this goddess of beauty shining like silver. She was trapped forever in the captivity of Xavier Knight, or as she called him, that beast. As soon as the wedding words were completed, time seemed to stop. After the completion of the wedding, Xavier Knight's demand for the immediate send-off, forcibly imposed, was touching the last limits of her patience. Clad in a red bridal dress, the girl whose face was shadowed by a veil, her eyes hidden in the fringe of her lashes, reflected only helplessness and hatred. She twisted the corner of her veil angrily, as if trying unsuccessfully to suppress the storm rising in her heart. She didn't know how Xavier had convinced the family for the send-off with his stubborn tone and pressure. Despite 1,000 denials, arguments, and tears, she was suddenly sent off without any preparation. Now she stood silently in the bridal dress in the room that had been decorated for the wedding night. Tears flowing from her eyes were soaking her cheeks, but there was only hatred in her gaze. She mercilessly tore the flowers and petals decorating the bed and threw them on the carpet. The same bed where she had been made to sit as a bride a little while ago. Against her will, contrary to her dreams. Her face was red with the intensity of anger, tears in her eyes, a lament of broken dreams in her heart, and a wave of helplessness in her being. She was staring with disbelief and anguish at the withered rosebuds scattered on the carpet, which a while ago didn't even have the shadow of her existence on them. Those buds were reflecting her withered desires, crushed emotions, and lifeless dreams. A few moments later, she lost her strength. She sat down slowly on her knees on the cold floor beneath her feet, and then, as if all the control inside her broke in a single moment, she began to cry bitterly. The hidden agony in her heart, the shock of the send-off, and her helplessness, she just kept shedding tears. Just as her dreams had been trampled and crushed into the ground, she was still sitting on the bare floor, mourning her helplessness. Tears were flowing silently down her cheeks, and an unstoppable wave of pain was rising in her heart. Suddenly she heard the sound of heavy footsteps from behind her. She lifted her head slowly, but didn't even deem it worthy to turn and look, as if her stubbornness still remained. "I warned you beforehand, didn't I?" The masculine voice coming from behind carried a prominent impression of force and victory. "Whether you want it or not, our wedding was to happen. And look, today you and I are married. You are present in my room today as my wife, and now you will have to live your whole life on my terms." Xavier Knight was now standing right in front of her. There was a triumphant smile of a won war on his face, a kind of pride that arises after humiliating a defeated person, while the girl sitting in front of him had a depressed glimpse of broken dreams and crushed desires on her face. She couldn't tolerate his heart-burning smile anymore. Trembling with anger, she pounced on him like a wounded lioness and tightly grabbed his shirt collar in her fists. Why did you do all this? What was my fault? Just that I called you a beast?" Pain, anger, and helplessness were all dissolved in her voice. "I don't accept this wedding, and I never will." Looking into his deceptive eyes, she spoke with contempt. Xavier Knight looked at her frustration, the moisture in her eyes, and her disheveled state for a moment. But then, bringing that same sarcastic, poisonous laugh to his lips, he spoke. "Wife, that was exactly your problem, which is now finished. Come on, now fulfill my rights like a good wife." Hearing this, it was as if all her wounds, all her sorrows became fresh. She had lost, but the fire inside her had not yet fully extinguished. "What rights are you talking about? When I don't even acknowledge you as my husband, what rights should I fulfill?" She spoke trembling, jerked his shirt collar free, and backed away. Okay, I'll tell you right now. Saying this, he covered the 6-foot distance swiftly, moved toward her, grabbed her hair mercilessly, and leaned over her red lips. He stayed leaned over until her breath hitched. When breathing became difficult for Scarlett, he gave her release from his captivity, but his grip on her hair was still strong, causing white pearls of tears to shimmer in Scarlett's eyes. Love is not my choice, it is my right, and you cannot escape this right, Mrs. Scarlett Knight. You are doing wrong, beast, she managed to say with difficulty, exhausted from managing the rhythm of her scattered breaths. Wife, I am not doing anything wrong. You are now my wife, and the sooner you accept this reality, the sooner you will find peace. Breathing his warm breath on her face, he growled. He looked at her beautiful red and white face with intoxicated eyes, which had turned red from the intensity of crying. Then, without caring for her resistance, he picked her up in his lap and moved toward the bed, turned off the side lamp with a hit of his hand, and cast the shadow of his masculine existence over her. The next day was their reception function. The hall was glittering with fragrances and lights. There were rows of guests on both sides, and a red carpet aisle was made in the middle. He extended his hand in front of Scarlett, but Scarlett William ignored his hand spread before her and held her heavy maxi dress with both hands. He was left stunned at her arrogance. Xavier Knight rubbed his jaw involuntarily, feeling humiliated among so many guests. Then, thinking of dealing with this cruel beauty later, he walked fast and joined her. While walking, suddenly Scarlett lost her balance. She wanted to take Xavier Knight's support to maintain her balance. What is it, baby? Feeling a lot of love? Just a while ago you humiliated me in front of so many guests. Did you forget that? He whispered, getting close to Scarlett with disbelief. His brown eyes held surprise, and the mischievous smile playing on his lips was incredibly beautiful. The sarcasm hidden in that beautiful smile was deadly. Give me support, I'll become a spectacle if I fall in front of everyone. Holding his arm with one hand while struggling to handle her heavy embroidered maxi with the other, she said nervously because she was standing with difficulty on his support due to a twisted ankle. Hold my hand. Why hold the thing, sleeve? Then you'll say I'm dying to hold your hand. He spoke, making a face. The tormentor was smiling because he had settled the score of his humiliation with Scarlett William on the spot. Xavier, please. Okay, if you insist so much, I will give you support, but on my own terms. Saying this, Xavier Knight spread his strong arm around her back and held her delicate waist in his strong grip so tightly that she hissed at his hard grip. She looked at him with tearful, complaining eyes. Sorry, dear, I am just like this. If you ask for support, in return, I will only give you pain. He spoke meanly. Savage, wild animal, monster! She also blurted out whatever came to her mouth without regard in front of him. At her insults, Xavier Knight dug his hard fingers badly into her waist, putting a brake on her running tongue. This time, actual tears came out of her eyes due to his merciless grip. Why are you looking at me like that? You were addressing me with who knows what titles, so I thought why not show you by becoming exactly that? Looking around, he growled through gritted teeth. Get lost from my sight. I don't want your support. She placed her hand on his iron fingers and spoke, writhing. In this struggle, before she could stumble and fall, exactly at that time, Xavier gathered her in his arms and picked her up. At his doing so, there was loud hooting in the full hall. Leave me! Did I ask you for support that you are doing this kindness to me? Because according to you, whenever I ask you for support, you will only cause me pain in return. Hitting his chest with her fist, she spoke with tears in her eyes. You would have fallen and dislocated your knee, and officially, I would have had to carry you later anyway. That's why I gave you support. He winked and whispered, and climbing onto the stage, he sat her down very gently on the exquisite sofa placed on the stage. After the freedom from the wedding, their normal routine started once again. Xavier Knight had become busy with some office project, while Scarlett had started going to the university. Her father had said truly, this wedding wouldn't make any special difference to her normal routine. Scarlett's days were seemingly passing happily, but at night, when she went to his room, Xavier Knight would hover over her head like a colossal genie, at which she would burn inside. It was 9 p.m. She was standing in front of the dressing table taking a final look at her preparation. She was wearing maroon trousers and a shirt. With dark red lipstick on her lips, she was ready to go when she felt Xavier's presence behind her. He stood behind her, taking her in his embrace. His heavy fingers were crawling playfully on her stomach, and his warm breath was scorching her shoulder. "Xavier, let me go. It's getting late. I have to go to my friend's birthday," she said with annoyance, looking at his reflection in the dressing mirror. "Go some other time. For now, this time is mine." Leaving his burning touch on her shoulder, he spoke with intoxication, and when he wanted to hide her in his existence, she exploded with anger. "You are not my love, Xavier Knight. My love is someone else. I love someone else." At the desire running in Xavier Knight's eyes for her existence, she screamed, "Don't disturb!" Instead of getting angry, he turned her face toward him and spoke softly, and took her red ruby lips in his grip, because he felt like she was lying to divert his attention from herself, so that he would get angry and move away from her. "You know I don't love you, but despite that, why do you tear at my body like a hungry beast? Please, for God's sake, end all this. Every night I can't take this unspoken torture." At his increasing audacity, she exploded with anger. While he, who had been tolerating her insolence for so long, feeling rejected, pounced on her like he was wounded. Entangling his iron fingers in her silky hair, he pulled her so close to himself that Xavier Knight's warm breath colliding with her face was terrifying Scarlett. "Weren't you ashamed mentioning your old affair in front of your husband?" he growled, gripping her hair from the nape. His hold on her hair was so brutal that Scarlett felt he would rip her hair out from the roots. He looked at her face. Her innocent face was testifying against her nature. Seeing the trembling tears in her eyes, he let go of her hair with a jerk, and barely controlling himself so he wouldn't do something wrong to her, he left the room. Upon stepping out of his room, he took a breath of relief. After that night, an unseen wall of strangeness came between them. Now, many days would pass without her seeing Xavier's face. First of all, he didn't come in front of her himself. If he did come, he would ignore her and pass by silently. Whenever Scarlett saw him, she saw a silent complaint in his brown eyes. But even reading his eyes, she used to ignore it. The summer season had started. It was a hot, scorching afternoon when suddenly she felt unwell at the university. Due to the heat, she fainted right there in the university. Upon regaining consciousness, the professor advised her to go home. She called her driver, but as luck would have it, her car broke down on the way. The car had to break down right then. Burning with fever, she hissed in anger. Sitting in the car, she started feeling nauseous. So she came out of the car for fresh air and looked at the driver who was changing the tire. Just then, a jeep of some rogue boys passed by. Seeing her standing in the scorching sun, they stopped their jeep and advanced toward her. "Hey, sweetheart, why are you burning your beauty standing in the sun? If you say, we can give you a lift." One of the men spoke meanly, lust in his eyes, advancing toward her. She was already unwell, and on top of that, she was stuck in a new trouble. She couldn't understand what to do. Before she could take any action or that man could come near her, an aerial gunshot fired from a distance grazed past her arm. She saw that at some distance, a man had stopped his car. The side door opened, and the gun in his hand was clearly visible. Before he could get out of his car, all those men, perhaps due to not having weapons, took their jeep and fled from there. Watching the person emerging from the car in a daze, her hazel grey eyes filled up. That person was none other than her husband, Xavier Knight, whom God had sent as her guardian in this difficult hour to protect her. "Sit in the car so I can drop you home," he said in a tone devoid of emotion. And then, many days passed just like that. Xavier had completely ignored Scarlett's presence after that night. He knew she, the fragile soul, was sick. That's why he silently took care of her as if a person was serving a sentence for sins they hadn't committed. He had put a shroud of silence on his tongue in front of Scarlett. This silence of his started bothering Scarlett inside. At Xavier Knight's frozen silence, she started considering herself a criminal. She began to feel like a thief to herself. And then, acting against her nature, she did something that made her sweat with shame whenever she thought about doing it. She looked at the other side of the bed where he had come into the room today after so many days. As soon as he came, he lay down on the other side of the bed, turning his back to her, and went to sleep. When Xavier Knight was sleeping, he felt kisses from her delicate lips on his back, at which his eyes opened even in light sleep. The delicate touch of her soft lips tore through Xavier Knight's light sleep. He opened his eyes slowly, but lay still without saying anything, just as if his emotions for Scarlett had turned cold. Those emotions that used to beat as a heartbeat for Scarlett were now buried in a deep silence. "I lied, Xavier. I don't love anyone." When there was no movement in Xavier Knight's existence, she moved a little closer and said in a choked voice. She felt as if her touch would melt Xavier's silence, and he would definitely turn toward her. But he lay there senseless, as if the season of his emotions had changed, and now even the heat of Scarlett's touch couldn't warm him. "I know." He spoke in a heavy tone without turning toward her. "Then turn toward me and sleep, Xavier." She spoke softly, as if the heat of Xavier Knight's indifference was descending into her heart like burning embers. Meanwhile, the person opposite was startled by her manner of address and turned. "Why are you calling me Xavier again and again? Call me Beast, right? Like you have always been calling me." He turned toward her and spoke with bitterness. In his bitter behavior, it seemed like shards of his broken relationship were hidden. "My touching puts you in agony. I am a wild animal, and I trample your existence like a hungry beast every night." He spoke with bitterness. His words said that Knight had wounded her heart. Meanwhile, Scarlett's eyes were shedding tears of remorse. "I am sorry. Forgive me. I know I didn't just make a mistake. I committed a cardinal sin. I used words for my husband that do not suit any faithful wife," she said with sorrow, hiding herself in his chest. She was regretful of her mistake. That night she had pushed him away, but now perhaps she had fallen in her own eyes. She lifted her head from his chest and wiped the tears flowing on her cheeks. "I am sorry. So sorry. Very, very sorry." She spoke restlessly, with moisture in her eyes and a tremor in her voice. "I can't bear this indifference of yours. Please forgive me. You feel bad when I call you my beast, right? That's why I will never say that in the future. Just please don't stay upset with me like this. Get angry at me like before, scold me, assert your rights over me like you have always been doing. But please, don't stay unrelated to me like this." Holding his face, she kept speaking madly. At her madness, a smile scattered on his beautiful face. Establishing his circle around her, he involuntarily kissed her forehead. She, who was speaking madly, went still at his touch and began to look with disbelief at the smile crawling on Xavier Knight's beautiful masculine lips, the smile that had touched her soul. "I told you, didn't I? In front of love, your stubbornness, ego, and hatred will all lose. Look, today you walked into my sanctuary yourself." He spoke mischievously, pressing the corner of his left eye. His words rained on Scarlett's sad heart like kind rain. And then, getting close to him, she squeezed him in a hug, as if she had been waiting for this moment forever. While at his acceptance, Scarlett's withered face blossomed again, as if the sadness of years shadowing her heart washed away in a moment. She began to consider herself safe in his embrace and the luckiest girl in the world. "I love you very much, Scarlett. I love you so much that perhaps words are unable to interpret my emotions. You are my love. Thank God that in this journey of love, God has made me successful in front of you." Xavier Knight said with madness, taking a deep breath of her hair's fragrance and absorbing it inside him. "I don't love like you do. However, in these past few days, it has been revealed to me that Scarlett Williams' existence is nothing without Xavier Knight. For Scarlett, Xavier Knight is like the breath running in her body. He inhabits every beat of her heart." Scarlett lifted her face, looked into his glowing eyes, and spoke with absorption. "Then, wife, give me permission to come close to you so that I can assure you of this with my actions more than words. Is there permission now?" He spoke boldly. At his bold and playful manner, Scarlett's long, dense lashes trembled with shame, and bowing her head silently, she gave Xavier Knight permission to conquer her. Upon receiving her permission, Xavier Knight bowed with dominance over her soft, smooth, delicate lips. Leaving the fragrance of his breath in hers, he was slowly taking possession of her delicate existence. The heat of their breaths and the noise of heartbeats were erasing every distance between them, and their whispers echoing in the room gave silent testimony to their love. Now, when the clouds of mistrust cleared, everything across the mist began to appear clearly, and the moonlight peeking from the cover of the curtains of the distant window hid behind the cover of clouds at their union.